Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum, the refreshing, delicious treat that gives you chewing enjoyment, presents for your listening enjoyment John Lund as
Johnny Dollar.
Nelson Price, Johnny.
Oh, yes. How are you, Mr. Price?
Fine. Got a job for you. You'll have to go to the West Indies.
The West Indies?
Near Haiti, St. Ledger. Mr. Claude Sheldon holds a big policy with us. We insure him, his wife, and his farm. They've had a lot of trouble. It's going to cost us a lot of money, and we think an investigation is necessary. Come on down to the office, and I'll give you as much as I've got, Johnny.
the makers of Wrigley's Spearmint Chewing Gum bring you John Lund in another adventure of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
For refreshing taste, plus chewing enjoyment, treat yourself to delicious Wrigley's Spearmint Gum. When your mouth and throat feel hot and dry, a stick of Wrigley's Spearmint gives you quick, long-lasting refreshment. The lively, full-bodied spearmint flavor cools your mouth and freshens your taste. The chewing itself helps keep your throat pleasantly moist. Best of all, you can chew and enjoy refreshing Wrigley's Spearmint Gum almost any time and any place. Keep a package handy right in your purse or pocket so you can chew a stick whenever you want it. For refreshing taste, plus chewing enjoyment, treat yourself to delicious Wrigley's Spearmint Gum. Millions enjoy it, and you will, too.
Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Home Office International Insurance and Bonding Company, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Voodoo matter. Expense account item 1, $206.40, plane fare and incidentals from New York to Port-au-Prince, Haiti. After receiving from you the necessary information concerning the insured, Claude Sheldon. After landing, I checked into the hotel and waited for Claude Sheldon as prearranged. I waited for about an hour. Come in.
Mr. Dollar?
That's right. Mr. Sheldon?
Yes.
I've been expecting it. Claude Sheldon pushed himself away from the door, grabbed a chair, and dropped into it. Took in long, deep breaths and smiled a very slow, weak smile.
I would have been here sooner, but there's been more trouble.
More trouble, eh? Well, my company told me a little about it, but you better give me your own story.
Certainly. As you know, I am a farmer.
Yeah.
My place is near Saint-Leger. A number of other farms in the vicinity, all doing very well until several months ago. First, it was fired. The cane field burned. One by one, the cattle became sick. Then some of the farmers grew ill and died.
Can I get you something?
Please. Some water, please.
Have you been to see a doctor?
I'm afraid a doctor can't help.
There you are.
Thank you.
Have you any idea what's wrong with you?
Yes and no. My Christian religion fights it, but my life on Haiti has taught me deep respect for it.
Respect for what, Mr. Sheldon?
Voodoo, Mr. Dollar. Oh, I know just what you're thinking. But a doctor in Haiti has examined me and my wife and the others. He can find nothing wrong.
Voodoo, Mr. Sheldon?
I don't expect you to understand. It's hard for me. Perhaps there is something else. I hope you can find out.
Well, I'm afraid I can't buy the voodoo theory, Mr. Sheldon.
There's one thing. Immediately after my wife and I became ill, I received an offer from my farm. A very low offer from a Saint-Leger banker. I investigated and found it had been made in the interests of one Arthur Cotswold.
Arthur Cotswold.
Haiti's biggest planter. Extremely wealthy.
Even after the sick cattle and the fires and everything?
Yes. That's why I became suspicious. The other farmers received similar offers.
More water?
Perhaps I don't think I... Mr. Dollar.
Mr. Sheldon. I called the hotel desk for a doctor, but by the time he'd gotten Sheldon to the hospital, the patient was dead. The authorities were called in, and I was questioned. A preliminary examination was made on the dead man, but the cause of death remained a mystery. So an autopsy was ordered. I told the chief of police to forward the report to me as Saint Leger and left for the Sheldon farm. Expense account item 2, $5 American for a beaten-up taxi to take me 10 miles into the country. A crowd of natives was standing in front of the Sheldon house as we drove up. I didn't know what it was. No one said a word. But something was wrong. I could feel it. I walked through the crowd and up to the house and stopped cold as the door opened.
Who are you?
I'd never seen anything like him. A native who was a good 7 feet tall and must have weighed at least 300.
Me, Bimba. Who are you?
Me, I'm Johnny Dollar. I'm an insurance investigator.
You from United States?
Yeah. I'm supposed to investigate the trouble here.
Me know. Master Shelton tell me.
I saw Master Sheldon about an hour ago.
He dead.
How do you know he died?
You come in house.
All right. What are all those people doing out there?
Their friend. Madame, she died too.
Bimba led the way into the bedroom, where Mrs. Sheldon lay on the bed, covered with a fresh white sheet, her eyes closed in death, her face drawn and tired. Bimba told me that she died about an hour before, and a cold chill ran up my back. I remembered her husband lying on the floor of my hotel room about an hour before.
Bad voodoo.
Is that why the cattle are sick and the fields burned?
We, bad voodoo.
Mr. Sheldon thought a man named Cotswold might have something to do with it.
Mr. Cotswold, big man. Very powerful.
What are those drums?
For Madame and Master. There's voodoo. Good voodoo. Give blessing for spirits. For Madame and Master.
I see. I want to talk to the police in Saint Leger. Who do I see?
Me take you.
Right then, I inherited Bimba. And if there was going to be any trouble, the giant servant would certainly help to make up for any lack on my part. The first thing I wanted to do was to contact the authorities in Saint Leger. And Bimba told me my man was Inspector Georges. Bimba saddled up 2 horses from the barn, and together we rode back to Saint Leger. Bimba pointed out the inspector's office and waited in front while I went in.
Oui, Monsieur Dollar. The Sheldons were a very fine family. I knew them very well.
How did everybody know they were dead?
On Haiti, things of such nature are never a secret. The natives know.
Voodoo?
Being a stranger to Haiti, Monsieur Dollar, I expect you to be a skeptic.
But you're not?
Let us say I've been in Haiti too long to be one, huh?
Huh. You know a man named Cotswold?
I would suggest you forget Monsieur Cotswold.
Why?
Monsieur Cotswold is a very prominent man.
Yeah, so I've heard.
He has the largest plantation owner in the West Indies, a self-made man with a considerable temper.
I'll mention it in my report to my office.
Bien, as you wish. But Monsieur Cotswold is looked upon by the people of Saint Leger with a great deal of respect. It is my opinion that you should avoid him. First, because I am certain he will not be in sympathy with your motives, and second, because the opposition you will encounter will be far-reaching and much too difficult for you to handle.
What if I come up with something incriminating?
Oh, for your sake, I hope you do not.
What do you do here in Saint Leger, Inspector?
I am the law, Monsieur Dollar.
But you wouldn't like it if this Cotswold were guilty of breaching that law?
If Monsieur Cotswold has broken the law, it would certainly be my duty to arrest him. But I am not considering the arrest, nor necessary steps that would have to be taken to prove the guilt. Dangerous steps, Monsieur Dollard. One might trip on those steps.
And break his neck.
For 10 years I have been the law. If tomorrow Cotswold decided it was time for me to relinquish my position, I should probably retire.
So you prefer the middle of the road, huh?
It is much easier to see what is ahead.
You can always get run down from behind.
I do as much as I can to prevent that possibility. No, again, my suggestion that you forget Monsieur Cotswold.
I left the philosophical inspector and went back to Bimba, still sitting outside on his horse. Every time I looked at him, it was like a little kid spotting the Empire State Building for the first time. He smiled a mouthful of white teeth and leaned over to give me a hand up. He caught me by the wrist and lifted me into my saddle as though he was hoisting a small bundle of laundry.
The inspector, he say forget Mr. Cotswold.
What? Bimba.
Oui, monsieur.
Oh, forget it. What do you think I should do?
Me think you do what you want.
And you know what I want.
Oui. You want to go see Mr. Cotswold.
The inspector says I shouldn't.
You go anyway.
You think it's a mistake?
If you're afraid, but you're not. You're not strong like Bimba, but you're a good fighter.
I don't like to fight, Bimba.
Bimba know that. We go see Mr. Cotswold.
We swung our horses around, and Bimba led the way up a long, narrow road, surrounded on both sides by sugarcane fields. Somewhere, from not too far away, I heard the drums start again. Bimba straightened in his saddle and looked off to the north. He began moving his shoulders, slowly keeping time to the steady rhythm of the drums. Then he began to sing softly. What does that mean, Bimba?
It mean in your language, it is our Papa who passes. Papa Damballa, the great sport.
Voodoo.
We. I later must leave you. Today, Wednesday, is the day of Papa Damballa.
He turned back to the north and continued his little chant until we reached the beginning of a long, high fence running along next to the narrow road. Bimba leaned down and swung open a big gate. Then we rode up the path that led through the Cotswold property until we reached the house. Sitting back between two huge trees was the Cotswold mansion. Bimba stayed on his horse, and I climbed down and walked to the front door.
Mr. Dollar, watch out for Mr. Jocelyn. He guard Mr. Cotswold.
Thanks.
What do you want?
I'd like to see Mr. Cotswold.
You do, huh?